Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our 2 p.m. session, Back to the Future, understanding how your mentoring lineage affects your application of DEI today to increase culture. Our presenter is Dr. Gabe Villas, the Los Angeles School of Mentorship. Dr. Villas, PhD, is the son of Los Angeles, who in 2017 was named the first professor of mentorship in the United States. Villas has pioneered academic research in protege-initiated mentoring and mentoring lineage. Dr. Villas is a highly sought-after public scholar and author, addressing the social ills of the day through the mentoring lens. Dr. Villas advocates for and models how to effectively implement intercultural mentoring as a community transformation. In 2011, Dr. Villas, alongside his team of proteges, founded One Protege Incorporated, which provides leaders and organizations the opportunity to receive coaching and capacity development. Dr. Villas recently launched the Los Angeles School of Mentorship, a progressive artistic community. As a lyricist, Villas has consistently performed online during the pandemic, helping inspire audiences to understand their identity, discernment process, and ethical values. Villas affirms mentoring's relationship to mental health. He is passionate about serving marginalized populations, especially around racism, religious trauma, sexual and gender discrimination, bereavement, and ambiguous loss. Please stay tuned for our Q&A at the end of Dr. Villas' presentation. And now we welcome Dr. Gabe Villas. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am coming to you from sunny, toasty Palm Springs, California. I'm really appreciative of COVID in one sense. It's able to allow folks to connect in different ways for conferences such as this, where I wouldn't normally have to cover the organization have to cover the airfare and the hotel to bring me out there. So to my Indiana brethren, fellow workers in the mental health industry, I really appreciate your work, and I hope that you'd be able to catch a little bit of my heart in terms of how we can help address cultural literacy through the lens of mentorship. Of course, if you were to ask me in terms of my theoretical orientation, where I stand, I would say I fall under narrative therapy, and today the presentation will be guided largely by my own narrative to help provide research in a very practical and accessible way. By the way, if you have any comments you want to leave or questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Those are up on my end, so I can address those in real time, or if some of them are a little more in depth, we could save them towards the end. So let's go ahead and start with hashtag. In this day and age, I guess everything needs a hashtag. If a tree falls in a forest and no one's able to hear it, if a hashtag doesn't exist on a plenary, on a workshop topic, did it even exist? Well, this is happening. To understand my journey, you need to understand that I'm Mexican American. I grew up on the east side of Los Angeles, and let's just say that where I grew up was not the easiest place to survive, to thrive. In fact, there was multiple times where I didn't think I was going to be lived to the age of 13, let alone 18, let alone 21. And thankfully, due to the help of mentors, folks in the community, my friends, I was able to persevere. If I pointed to a life-changing moment and wanted to get to how my mentoring journey began, which would really be my rationale for why I'm involved in mentoring at all, even today, we'd have to go back to my sophomore year. So cue up embarrassing photo from high school. And there I am in my ID card, 1995. I was probably enjoying Tupac and Biggie back then. I was out there pre-braces, dreaming one day that I could get braces, and thankfully I did that. So, but just going back to that era, in the midst of being, confused, having some anxiety, trying to plan for the future, trying to aspire to things that no one in my family had done before, things that I'd never seen anybody do before. It was a challenge, right? Because how can you go somewhere if you don't have the role models, right? In terms of where I wanted to go. Tying into that, I came up in a religiously conservative home that didn't really value things like mental health therapists, psychologists per se. So a lot of the stuff that I was going through, I could use the help of a mental health professional, but yet just did not do that. And I just want to highlight that out of my own pain, my own fear, my own anxiety, this is where this photo was taken. So I'm going to take you now to October 30th. It was early in the morning at my high school. I was running late, unusually. Then all of nowhere, I hear a loud file cabinet fall on the floor. Sounds like a 50-foot file cabinet fall on the floor. It's this loud metallic rumble through the school. And I don't know what this is. I hear screaming, I hear people running, yelling, and I'm on the opposite side of where this noise came from. So for me, growing up in that environment, if I heard a noise, I wanted to go check it out, see what's going on. So literally, as I'm running towards the sound where it came from, my classmates are running past me. And as I turn the corner, I noticed that the place that the sound emanated from, which was immediately outside of my classroom I was supposed to be in for the next class, because this was the passing bell period when this took place. And when I got to the scene, I saw one of my classmates was hand blown off, two other students with shrapnel in their face and chest, and here I just walked into a pipe bomb explosion. And to be blunt, I grew up in a violent place, and shootings and stabbings were common, and racial strife and gang warfare was real, but I'd never seen anything like this before, which was completely random violence to hit anybody. In fact, there was no timer to it or anything. It was just like whoever came upon it at that time, it was just going to go down. So what immediately happened after that is all us students got shuttled to the football field while every major news station in LA's helicopter was flying over the school while bomb sniffing dogs and the FBI went through our campus to find more bombs, and they never found any other bombs. In fact, they didn't even find out who did this. And you imagine how scary that is, right? Who is it that caused this to occur? And at that football field, I just reflected on what was going on as people were hugging and crying, and it was pretty much a scene out of 9/11 on my campus. And I don't know if grief counselors existed during that time of 1995, but I can say that I knew that there was going to be school the next day. The school was not going to be canceled, and it was kind of like business as usual the next day. And I thought, man, what something needs to happen here. What could be done here? And I went home that night and reflected. One day my younger brother, younger sister will come here one day, and I decided I needed to do something. So the next day I founded a peer mentoring program. So essentially you could say that I've been in the mentoring world since 1995, when I was 27 years ago. And through that journey of really what I would frame it as of youth empowerment, we understood that there was going to be no adults that were going to come save us the next day. We understood that if something was going to change, we were going to have to try to take ownership of the school and try to create things that were possible, that were beautiful. And I ended up starting this club, and it was peer mentoring, and we were the first club to move into the gym. I ended up writing 5 plays over 2 years, and directing those plays and acting in those plays. I had never even been in a play before, but just wanted to set up more positive artistic activities for the students to get involved with. A friend of mine ended up launching a choir on the campus. Another one launched a band that was a part of the club, and I was writing 8-page newsletters, and we were meeting twice a week. And back in the mid-90s, we were fundraising for ourselves, $500 a month we were raising, and that was able to pay for lunches for our classmates when they would come to the meetings. So again, I didn't really know anything about mentoring at that point. I didn't read any books. I didn't necessarily have like a formal mentor at that time. I did have role models, people that I saw, hey, they're doing something. Let me try to follow their progression. Let me go ahead and do what they did, and that would work. And just over time, my mentoring began to increase. So that takes us to this image. When I ended up in graduate school getting my master's degree, I came across a nonprofit organization to provide mentors to inner city youth workers. And it was within that context that I was meeting with about 24 individuals. They were going through community college. Half were African American, half were Latino, through, again, different parts of LA, East LA, South Central, Northwest Pasadena, Compton. And as I met with them every week to try to check up on them, right, it was how you guys doing in school? Then how are you doing if you're serving at any nonprofits? Visit them on their first day of work, double date with them, have them over my house, visit them their house, go attend their extracurricular activities. It was kind of like a social worker, honestly, except I didn't receive any training there. It was just a great mentoring program that was holistic. They also provided money to pay for school, books, healthcare, dental care, mini grants to do work if they were working with youth, art supplies, help them buy cars, pay for their gas, meals. It was a great holistic organization. And it was within that after 4 weeks of doing this, I thought, oh my God, nobody knows me as well as I know you fellas. And that kind of scared me because I'd done some cool things in life. And then reflected maybe on the culture of the community I came up in that produced me, which was a lot of times some of the mentor figures had to spend time putting out fires, whether it was in their own lives, their own organizations, or within the folks that were like most at risk, where sometimes the higher achievers didn't have the opportunity to gain access to them, right? It was like, hey, you seem like you're doing all right, you're doing good, okay, let's keep it moving. I gotta go help out someone that's overdosed or having problems with the criminal justice system, or probably gonna drop out of high school, right? Not someone like Gabe, right? So in a way, I felt I got adultified, right? Young, kind of grow up, taking responsibility for others, caring about my younger brother, sister, then basically having a high school of siblings that I, in a sense, adopted to try to help. So with that, I want to say that I did want to learn more about mentoring and did end up going to USC, studying educational psychology, graduated when I was 27 with my doctorate. And what you're going to hear now is some of my research that I've studied, that I've published on, that I've spoken at different universities and places around the country, and that I've also begun adapting to mental health space, where I enrolled in a master's degree program last year to be a licensed MFT PCC professional. So let's go ahead and go into hashtag mentoring lineages. Some of you are familiar with genograms, right? That psychological family tree, that diagram, the pedigrees, the information, including the histories of illness and death, and that graphic illustration of repetitive patterns of behavior across generations. When we look at a genogram, and, it's been used oftentimes in medical space, right? Mental health space. And what I would say is perhaps our mentoring lineages would have a lot to say about who we are. So for example, as therapists are getting trained, they have supervisors that act as mentor figures, right? That are providing them with advice and encouraging them and doing a plethora of other things to help prepare them for their practicums, their internships, and then to move on into the future. But a question that I often reflected on as folks are going through these types of internship programs, mentorship programs, even informally being mentored by folks is, what did you get from the people that went before you? So for example, some folks can relate to what I'm about to say. Were you hazed by your mentor? Meaning, did your mentor, in a sense, throw you in the deep end and give you a lot of tough love, and in a sense, produced maybe more anxiety than they should have? Perhaps they had you questioning whether or not you should be in the profession. And again, I'm highlighting that concept of tough love, which I heard one person say, hey, Dad, I get the tough part, but when did we ever get to the love part? And what I'm, again, trying to just underline, put in bold and red, is that just as in the genograms and the studying of individuals and their families, there are certain things that we got from our mentors that some of us may not even realize is subconscious. We don't even know that certain things that we're doing are how we continue to maybe perpetuate abuse on others. Maybe we continue to perpetuate certain behaviors that we didn't enjoy, but yet it's almost like the default. It goes back to the old saying, right? I don't think ever in the history of mankind, when someone who's a parent says to their kid, says something, and they goes, "Oh my God, that was the voice of my parents, my guardians." I don't think it's ever been, "Hey, get over here and let's go do snuggles and go for a walk on the beach," or like, "Let's go play show and tell with your toys." It's usually something very evil, heinous, mean, abusive, undermining. And what I'm getting at is sometimes these things that have been placed within us, we may not realize that not only are we getting certain types of behaviors, we're getting certain types of mindsets, worldviews. So we'll get more into this at depth, especially how it ties into culture as a mental health therapist. But I'll throw up a definition of a mentor here. Comes from the Latin meaning mind, the Indo-European base think. It's the root word mental. You can kind of sneak it there. Mentor, mental. Means that mentoring has to do with training people how to think, ways to orient themselves to the world. Now I'm going to outline as we go into like mentoring about a couple different questions, the who, what, when, where, why, and how, of how you can analyze any mentoring relationship, whether it is your relationship with your current mentor or your relationship with any proteges that you have that you're engaging with. So this graphic again is called the VS mentoring lineage, and this should be available for download on the platform. So the first question is, who mentored you demographically speaking? Who's mentored you demographically speaking? I'm going to say something now that may be upsetting to some folks, maybe disconcerting. Question is, when you think about, say, here you are, you're the protege of your mentor, the intern of your supervisor, and there we have the mentor's mentor, the grand mentor. When we think about the demographic of this mentor, who were they? What was their ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, nationality, ableness, political perspective, area of expertise? But let's just touch on ethnicity, racial background. If every mentor you've had is from the same group, that means you have a segregated mentoring lineage. I don't think anyone would appreciate in this era if you went to someone's house. Well, heck, this may happen more than we want to admit. Every author was from the same ethnic background, segregated library. I'm a professor. I've taught at a couple schools. Some syllabi are segregated, right? They only have a certain perspective. What I'm getting at is who we allow to invest into our lives, who we allow to hold us accountable says a lot. Says a lot. It shapes how we're able to contextualize what we're learning. It shapes who it is that's challenging us and helping us to grow. And I can advocate for a lot of things right now, but again, I'll just touch on the racial ethnicity. There is no way that we should be allowing ourselves to have segregated mentoring lineages today. And that's especially significant now as we work with such a diverse clientele of individuals, right? We need to be able to doing consultations. We need to be able to have peers. We need to have peer mentors. We need to have folks from different backgrounds that have the ability to challenge us and to speak into our lives. And not only that, we need to wonder whether our mentors have segregated mentoring lineages. So I'll put this out there. Everybody that I work with knows who my mentors are. That's important. Why? Because they need to know what that relationship is like. They need to know how their mentor interacted with their grand mentor. And for the record, I got the phrase grand mentor from watching a show called 30 Rock, starring Tina Fey and Alec Baldwin. And feel free to Google that and to learn more about grand mentors as illustrated through a sitcom. But the grand mentor and the mentor, if they interact in a certain way, it may be the default how the protege could understand I'm going to interact with them. And it needs to be also in place so that the protege could know, hey, I got hazed by my mentor. And the way that we ended up interacting, my mentor did some things that weren't the most positive and caused me to have an anxiety attack or to go into depression or, certain things. So that in a certain level of accountability, the protege can watch that and be like, hey, mentor, you're kind of doing some stuff your mentor did. Now, of course, obviously, I'm talking about having mutuality and mentoring relationships where mentors and proteges can speak frankly, but that also could be discussed too. The mentor speaking now, my mentor, your grand mentor, never asked me a question, output of like how the relationship was going. Again, generational things perhaps. Never asked me very poignant things about my self-care. Was more concerned with productivity, perhaps, filling out reports and meeting deadlines. So with you, I'm going to make sure I'm doing that. So again, you're humanizing yourself, you're humanizing the lineage, you're allowing the protege to learn and understand, hey, this thing isn't stopping, we're going to continue building upon each other's lineage. Which type of mentor? Which type of mentor have you had? Were they informal, semi-formal, formal? So here's a formal mentor. Formal mentor is someone that is trained, oriented, provided with the structure in terms of how they're going to connect with you. There's a process to connecting the protege with the mentor, or in this space, perhaps the intern with the supervisor. There's certain expectations, how often you'll meet, what the topics will be. Over here on the other side, with no bow tie, the complete opposite side of the spectrum, is the informal mentor. This is the person that you just pick up in a relationship. So for example, in this setting, if someone here said, Gabe, I ain't got no friends that are Mexican American that are based out of the West Coast, I wouldn't mind getting some mentoring, some relationship going, and you reached out to me, technically that would be an informal mentor there, right? Someone that you met at a conference, a colleague that you occasionally connect with, those peers. Then the center is informal mentoring. This would be that if we were connecting and you were building off of like, okay, I sent Gabe a LinkedIn message, we're going to connect. If you were to say something like, hey, can we begin to connect once a month and we'll do over video, and can we text occasionally throughout the month? Would that be all right with you? The semi-formal mentoring puts the onus more on the protege, right? The protege is actually placing a structure in that relationship now that there's some type of organization to how they will interact with each other. So again, the formal relationship has the structure set already. That is largely based by the mentor, the supervisor, how that relationship will go down. The informal or the natural mentor on the far other side is more organic. It happens when it happens. And then the semi-formal places more of an emphasis on the protege. And as you can tell within this setting, you can see why, like you can see some of the rationale why I think that's so important, the semi-formal mentoring, for people to understand what that is. In fact, perhaps that's something that we advocate to our clients when we talk about developing new relationships with folks or to seek out mentors, right? They need folks to help them out. So we're in a sense helping to coach them through relationships. Hey, this is how you might want to consider, what's the area of need that you have? Who's someone that you might connect with? How might you end up doing that? So the semi-formal mentoring is very significant. What took place? What took place in this relationship? Now we're gonna get to what I call the straight A's of mentorship. We got advice, accountability, and affirmation on top. This is what I call the words of mentoring. It's appreciative when people give us words. Some words are very expensive. They're valuable, meaning some words took people dozens of books to read to solidify down to a small piece of wisdom to you. Some things that are shared over words were learned through the school of hard knocks and through experience, and it cost a lot to find out these truths. I learned some things the hard way, right? Difficult truths. We also have trade secrets, right? The bread and butter that someone has. Hey, this is something that took me years in the industry to figure out, and testing. And in a sense, that's what today is, right? I'm giving you information that took me 27 years to learn, honed down through books and resources and all that. And by the way, if you could hear that, I live next to airport. So someone's taking off from Palm Springs, perhaps Indiana, to go visit you all, I don't know. But the words, I want to differentiate the words to the actions of mentorship, and it hinges on something called advocacy. Advocacy is where the mentor begins to put their self on the line, to begin to vouch for you, right? For the protege, for the intern. And in that advocacy, that is them perhaps for the first time really putting themselves out there for you, taking a risk, right? Because what was done before on the words, the advice, accountability, affirmation, although affirmation could play out in a bunch of ways, what I was just trying to highlight there was a lot of that happened behind the scenes, one-on-one or a triad in a group. The advocacy is like a letter of rec or something more public for you. Then finally, the actual words of mentorship. Assignments, that's you doing something with your supervisors. It can be opportunity to build up your resume. Assistance, that's finances, helping you get a job, grant, putting money in your pocket. Then associations, the mentor actually saying, hey, go over here and tell them I sent you. They're really vouching for you at that point. They are really putting you in. And what I would say is that oftentimes mentoring relationships stay at the top. So again, if we were going to go back to talking about mentoring lineages, oftentimes in these relationships between the mentor and the protege, the mentor has simply given words to the protege, in a sense, in some sense, have said, hey, I got your back, I support you. But when we get to the actions, it's more like I'm showing you I support you. I am taking a risk. And there is risk on this bottom section because it could potentially make the mentor, the supervisor look bad when they're really going to bat for you. And what I would say is that some mentoring lineages have mentors that play it safe. They are not quick to take risks on people. They are afraid of failure. On my end, I would say in my mentoring lineage, we play high risk, meaning there is a good chance someone might fail. And I'm not saying they'll fail because you give them a task that's so big. I'm saying that when you empower somebody to do something that is difficult, there may be a chance where they don't succeed. And that through the failure, that some of those are the greatest learning moments, right? So some lineages have it where we throw you in the deep end, and then all of a sudden you fail, and then you get torched and eviscerated. I can't believe you didn't do that right. And after the fact, what I'm saying is provide someone with support, give them an opportunity. Then if they fail, lean back into love and support to figure out how they could grow and develop. So again, it's not necessarily saying we're just giving opportunities to folks willy-nilly. We're just vouching for folks and letting them mess up. But it's a realistic thing that if you want to go to my mentors I've had over the years and ask them, hey, has Gabe ever failed when you gave him one of these opportunities? You will hear, yeah, probably, of course. But did that Gabe use that as a learning opportunity? Yes. In a sense, then the protege is beloved by the mentor because they see that the protege doesn't think they all figured out, that they're willing to be teachable, they're willing to grow, they're willing to learn. Let's go ahead and move down to the when. When did this relationship take place? Their age, your age, length of time. I should toss this out there just so I'm perfectly clear. I don't believe that all mentoring has to take place with someone that's older and someone that's younger. Heck, if you need someone to mentor you that is 10, 20 years younger than you, that knows something very well and is experienced in it, go ahead and be humble. That's cross age, cross generational mentoring. That's significant. Just in the same way, I don't think that people of the same gender should be limited to mentoring each other. That should be bigger. It should be a plethora of relationships that people are swimming around, right? Now, ideally, in any mentoring relationship, there's learning going on both sides, ideally. But I think you know what I'm alluding to here, where in some relationships, it's only cut and dry. Every single mentor that I have, that I approach, that I meet with, it could be older. And yeah, I question that, like, are we mistaking age equaling maturity? Are we mistaking age equaling expertise? Because as we know, we've worked in enough spots to go, no, you could be an old fool. That's possible. You could be someone that's old and ignorant. You'd be someone that's old and stuck in their own ways. You'd be old as someone that's not, moving forward in the same way. The same critiques could be used of a younger generation, right? So in a way, I'm just openly saying, like, let's not practice ageism. We don't know who has what they have to offer, and don't try to limit ourselves to who can speak into our lives and who can teach us. Next, where did this mentoring take place? Where does this relationship happen geographically, meeting locations? This may be controversial, but I don't think all mentoring should take place based on goals and outcomes. There should be some social aspects of the relationship. There should be some connection that takes place that addresses the whole self holistically. There should be meetings that take place in the world, coffee shops, golf courses, homes. Mentoring should not be limited and sanitized by someone's office or one location. That's like going on dates and only dating the person that you're interested in or trying to impress at the same place. Okay, forgive me if some folks in here are married and that's your thing. Okay, maybe that's your thing. What I'm saying is it's spontaneity, trying new things. Hey, that helps keep us young, right? That keeps us motivated. That helps keep us creative. And who knows what could come up in different places. So for example, one thing that I did with folks that I mentored is we would go through walks through the campus, the college campus that I attended. And it'd almost be like they were my relatives, right? Walking through the campus, they're not getting the campus tour, but I'm saying like, oh yeah, this is where something significant happened to me, or this is where, I had a teachable moment, and it's bringing the story to life, right? So again, advocate us against us being robots, right? We're not robots. We're beautiful people with all types of array of experiences that can help liven up relationships and really show our hearts and minds in a more effective, comprehensive way. Why? Why did this relationship take place? Well, if we went into what I'm trying to do when I mentor, right? And I think that certain people would have certain degrees of what they put a rationale for why they do things. I think one reason I mentor is I want people to help understand their identity more effectively. Who are they? And be comfortable with that. And part of them being comfortable with their identity is me being comfortable with my identity, right? And modeling how it is that I got to where I'm at today, and how is it that I understand the world, and how I understand myself, and how I relate to others. Identity is very closely tied to community, right? Because you're describe yourself in connection or opposition to certain communities, and who it is that embraces you, and who it is that hasn't embraced you, and what is it that you're trying to do to embrace others, right? So identity is extremely significant. Also gives opportunity to discuss self-care, gives opportunity to understand folks' narratives. Then we have discernment. Discernment is the ability to have someone understand how I made a decision. Beyond I applied to two schools, one school offered me more money than the other, so I chose the one that provided me with more scholarship cash. And I'll just put this out there. If every decision that one makes is based off of what can further their career or makes them more money, that's a very intriguing mentoring lineage you're setting up there. Because your discernment process is basically saying, this is what wins. Again, I'm not against making money. I'm not against being a professional. I'm not against, meeting career goals. But what I'm saying is certain stories need to have more depth to them, more rationale. Why is it that you actually did choose this route? And when is it that you chose this opportunity that paid less? And why is it that you made certain decisions to be whistleblower or to not be a whistleblower? So I'm getting at is I'm trying to take the gloss off of someone's fast version of their life of like, I did this, I married this person, I dated this person, I live here, and to go more into the process of how is it that you understand yourself, your identity, then how does that play itself out in terms of how you make decisions, right? I've said many times to folks around me, I don't really trust my own decision-making process totally because we have blind spots. So usually if I make a big decision, I'm going to run that by mentors above me, peer mentors to the sides, and even my proteges to get an understanding of what are they seeing? Do they see everything that I'm seeing? Next, we will go ahead and go to ethics. Ethics could tie into many things, spirituality, values, help people understand like what's actually grounding them, right? So these are the types of things that I'm concerned about when I was talking about the why did this relationship take place. If I went back to the story that I started with here, you're now going to get why I do what I do. I do what I do because a violent event occurred in my community and I wanted to be a part of making a difference. And that goes beyond money because I did not get paid for 3 years while I did that. It goes beyond career. It goes beyond a lot of things because it was dangerous what I did. It's dangerous to confront a gang-inflicted area and try to promote peace in the midst of a place that has so much violence. It costs me something, right? So in a sense, I set in the baseline in the mentoring lineage, it's okay to make sacrifices at certain points of your life, or to really stop yourself and hit a reset button on your life was going one way and it's okay to go another way, right? So change and transformation is normal and applicable. How? How did the relationship develop over time? Did the protege begin to take more ownership? Did the mentor begin to empower the protege more and take more of a backseat? Was the relationship grounded in mutuality? Was there certain things where maybe the protege at the beginning had to drive an hour to meet with the mentor every time to meet on the mentor's turf? Did the mentor ever turn around and start driving an hour to meet with the protege? Protege, I've been using that word a lot. Why? Well, it's always fun to use a French word that has 2 accent marks. It's also cool to see that, like, again, the root word just plays itself out so clearly. Protected, protege, protected. It's literally translated French, protected. And in the Latin, it describes a shield. So the shield is a protege, right? That's what it is. So in this analogy of the protege is shielded from the mentor. So we're going there, folks. We're going into my heart now of what I think about the role of supervision, the role of mentors. There are some battles that proteges are not equipped to fight completely on their own yet. They need some help. Think of any Star Wars film, think of any coming of age, rite of passage superhero film that has any mentor and protege figure. And you know that oftentimes the protege is fighting a battle that is much bigger than themselves. In fact, sometimes the battles are so difficult, the mentors themselves didn't even win these battles when they were emerging and even at their highest levels. Oftentimes it requires 2 people to accomplish the thing, working in tandem, partnership. So what I'm getting at is one way this occurs is that the mentor is acting as the shield. They're going before the protege, and in the sense you're seeing something like this. Here goes the mentor. Here goes the protege behind him. Mentor's going down the path, and they go. hey, watch out. There's like this snake pit right here. Or watch out, something's going down right here in your first year as a therapist. Or be aware of this when you're working with someone that does this. And as they say, you don't need to get burned by fire to learn it's hot. Some of the lessons you're getting are from before. But in addition to that, the protege may say, hey, I'm really struggling with something. I need some help. I'm being taken advantage of, abused. And again, I'm going there. Harvey Weinstein stuff, Bill Cosby stuff. That's not limited to the entertainment industry now. That occurs in our space, mental health space. That occurs in our space, academia. There are supervisors that are not protecting their proteges. They're taking advantage of them, or they know of abuses that are taking place that they are not blowing the whistle for. Now, again, I'm not saying this is the majority of folks. I'm just saying that stuff like what I mentioned before and the Me Too movement exists in every industry, and it's a heart-wrenching place to be in when you're a protege and you're at the lower rung of the ladder in terms of privilege and power, and someone above is taking advantage of you. So for me, being a protege is a vulnerable place, and being a mentor or a supervisor is sacred. It is important. It is significant because they have the opportunity and hear certain things that are taking place that need to really be acted on to ensure that negative things do not occur. I'm just going to shoot through a couple of things in these closing minutes before we get to the Q&A. So first, and the hashtag making a mentor. I'm going to talk about some of my work as a professor just to put a lens on what I'm talking about. Here is a image of me with my wife, and that's our son, Reese's Vias. And he is wearing a bow tie right there, and he's a cool little Chihuahua. And we would host over students and people that I'd mentored over the years regularly. So I do realize that within talking about like mentoring lineages, I try to ensure that people have access to me over the years that we've engaged with each other. So in a sense, I have kind of like an alumni network that developed. So a couple times over the years, we would invite people over our homes, and they would be able to have a authentic Mexican American night, I would call it, under the stars in Los Angeles. And the star person was Reese's. So there he is, big smile on his face, loving all the visitors to his house. Here is an image of some of the proteges there. You could tell they're from diverse backgrounds and such. Here is two of the alumni that I've worked with. That's a couple, and they're sharing some of their experiences over the years. Would have different people speak, like my relatives or former proteges, to just encourage folks. Of course, going back to Reese's, he loved gaining attention, so there he is getting petted by a lot of people, especially folks that were from out of state that were missing their furry family members. He would get a lot of attention. I'll let you know what was on the menu, right? It's getting towards lunchtime over here in California. I would have horchata, so that's a Mexican rice drink that I would serve the folks. Homemade chips and salsa. We would have a Mexican dessert, arroz con leche, or rice pudding that my grandmothers would make that I would teach the students how to make. We'd have pan dulce. We'd have Mexican hot chocolate. And then I thought, yeah, here they are learning how to make the arroz con leche. But then I thought, hey, let's be cross-cultural here. What is the most European American dessert possible that I've seen from pop culture? Maybe it's s'mores, I don't know, but I was like, let's do that too. So we were, meeting at the middle, so to say. And you can see that I'm like going plethora of different toppings here. There's like sprinkles there. There's like Nutella. There's other stuff off camera too that's not listed here that we were sharing. There's a little group shot with folks. And then we would do like group shots here because again, if we didn't take a selfie outside, did the event really take place? I think I will go ahead and pause right there for any questions.
Dr. Villas, thank you so much. You've given such a great, very tactical approach that you don't need an organization to create a mentor protege program for you. You can do this organically, but then you have to have these safeguards and understand your individual responsibilities, not only as a mentor, but also as a protege. Some of our questions are gleaning more from the context of how do you ask, right? How do you begin that relationship, and what are some really specific ways to uh, verbalize what you're seeking from either a protege seeking a mentor or someone that feels very strongly that there's been identified um, points to address that they feel like they're empowered and have the education and knowledge to address them.
Yeah, first off, let me just put this out there. If there's somebody that you're interested in mentoring you, and again, I'm differentiating mentoring from coaching right now. It's potentially a subtle difference. Mentoring is more like relationship based. Coaching is more like getting charged. So for example, developing an organic relationship with someone that's that's an author that you're just gonna like meet with, get friendly advice from, that's one thing. If you're actually gonna meet with someone and they're gonna like hold you accountable to like deadlines and like show you PowerPoints and like pull back the curtain. I mean, I'm not saying a mentor can't do this, but pull back the curtain on like their entire writing process and everything, that's more coaching. So to go with mentoring, let's say you did find somebody that you were interested in to track down, right? Maybe it's somebody that you heard in the conference this week, and you go ahead and go on LinkedIn and you identify them and say, okay, I'm going to send them a message. I try to start with this little template, write them a 3-paragraph message. Now, you could say, Gabe, 3 paragraphs, are you serious? Hey, I'm just telling you what I've seen works from my research. But the first paragraph has to do with some deference. We'll use that word. Could be called butt kissing too. Let's just say that you're putting mustard on the hot dog and you're telling them how special they are, right? So you might say why it is that they attracted your attention, right? So you might say, hey, I really appreciate the insights you gave. I really appreciate like how you stated this. You might even state in that first paragraph how they've already began to impact you. The second paragraph is about yourself. We all have things that we could say that are attention getting about ourselves, or paint us in the best light possible. You might say like, hey, this is some of the work I do. This is the communities I'm connected with. This is like a cause I care about, right? So you're basically painting a picture now of who you are. And then the last paragraph is the ask, right? And I mean, you could ask high, ask low, ask minimal, medium, whatever, but it might be like, hey, I would love to, if they're in the city, I would love to take you out for coffee sometime. Or, I would love to grab a phone call with you if you have any time over the next 2 weeks. I have extremely flexible schedule, something like that, to get to know each other better. And perhaps we could talk about how we could collaborate or partner or something like that. You might also toss out what you have to offer, right? That gets more complicated, right? Like, I'm really knowledgeable in social media, or like you're introducing mutuality already. So what am I telling you to do? I'm telling you to demonstrate teachability. I'm telling you to demonstrate that you're a quality individual. And I want you to demonstrate that you're willing to practice mutuality. You're not just going to take, you want to give too. So I have a story. I got a lot of stories, but I'll give you one story. My wife taught elementary school for years, real little ones, 4 or 5-year-olds. They would do that thing where they would like read at the front of the class, and you read at the front of the class them, so they're all sitting in with their legs crossed, crisscross applesauce style, right? So they're sitting and you're reading the book. So I did this, and after I read, one of the little ones pulled up my pant leg and was like, "Hey, are you staying for snack time?" I said, "Absolutely, I'm staying for snack time. I only came for snack time." Then they told me how to read a book, and I was like, "I like reading books too, but I'm here for snack time." I'm like, okay, and be right back. And they just like run out of the classroom. You're like, oh man, these kids nowadays, right? Like, what's with this? Like, I thought we were like wanted to hang out, and now this little one just ran off. All right, whatever. And then all of a sudden they run in and they put down a milk in front of you, a milk in front of them, and a cookies in front of you, and cookies in front of them. What's with someone showing that level of generosity? Break my heart open, right? So I'm getting at is, oftentimes we don't know how to articulate who we are and what we have to offer, right? So we think that the relationship is, oh my God, this superhero, this mega mentor is going to help me out. And we don't go, oh my goodness, this is how I can help them out. And some of that requires tremendous self-awareness, self-reflection, and people around us that could speak into our lives to help us even articulate some of that stuff, to say, hey, this is what makes you marketable in a relationship. Now, again, I'm into mutuality, so this is all done in the best possible way possible that's healthy.
Dr. Vias, thank you so much for that. You know, we had a conversation earlier about really being able to speak your experience and share that so that we are more intimate really with our coworkers in a purposeful intent to be more collaborative, be more aware, be more culturally competent. And there's a level of vulnerability there, right? That
right.
Some might say, well, I don't want to feel that
right.
within my workplace, which lends us to our next question, which is the number 2 reason people leave their jobs is because of their direct management. So what is your perspective on, should direct management also be supporting mentoring within their supervisory roles in context of exactly that vulnerability and some of those other key direct reporting relationships?
There's multiple ways I can answer that. The first one is, not all mentoring can take place at your work site. Some mentoring needs to take place in the safety of other people that have nothing to do with your work site, that you can say things that potentially stuff won't get kicked back up to higher ups, right? So that's why it's important to have colleagues in the field, right, that are able to have, again, potentially see your blind spots, that can provide you with wisdom from the outside. And let's put this out there, like, all of us should be potentially continually job hunting, because shouldn't be loyal to a site. We should be loyal to a calling. We should be loyal to a demographic that we feel called to. We should be loyal to wherever we're drawn, our hearts are drawn. And for some places, the best thing that could happen to us is that we transition out. I'll put it like this. There's certain jobs that I would get offered now that would be considered dream jobs. What was my dream job when I was 10 years younger than now? That's not still my spot. So for some of us, we may feel the tension that we're getting pushed out, right? And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that we're getting pushed out, because we're getting forced to grow and to develop. On the other hand, I will let you know that in my work with organizations, with like senior leadership in government, I've asked very pointed questions about the degree of mentoring that take place in these organizations. For example, I remember did a mentoring audit on an organization. I was talking with the senior leader, and I'm being vague on purpose now. I'm protecting this anonymity, but senior leader, I was talking to him, and I said, how does your organization value and promote mentorship, right? And he told me something, and I said, I've heard somebody's name brought up by multiple folks, that this person does not have a senior title, this person is not in management, yet this is the person that everybody goes to for help, because they know that they're safe, and they know that they are someone that can provide them with like wisdom and advice. And I said, what are you doing so that that person does not get burnt out and gets affirmed? Because as far as I could tell, that's what's going to happen, right? Is that they're doing their job, and then they're basically doing management's job elsewhere. So what I'm getting at is, Ideally, yes, should supervisors provide the mentoring that I discussed here? Absolutely. On the other hand, for those of us that are either leaders or soon to be leaders at our places of employment, if we don't have the bandwidth to offer this level of help, we need to figure out who can do it on staff and affirm them, whether it's through stipend or through other types of affirmations and titles, because that really is what's going to help further the profession, right? We need as many safe people that that our employees can speak with to help develop. And again, if a supervisor has to play more of a management slash organizational role that's more, let's say, formulaic, that needs to be supplemented by other places as well.
Thank you, Dr. Villas. There's
Yeah.
quite a few additional questions I'm going to attempt to kind of consolidate a little bit here. When we're looking at reaching out to our colleagues across the state, we have many different distinctions: community mental health centers, opiate treatment providers, our systems of care, focusing on our schools and communities, and then also our focuses on our psychiatric hospitals and many of our independent practitioners that are have, so to speak, hung their own shingle. When you look at reaching out to colleagues, et cetera, are there any collaborations or resources or digital groups that you would also recommend that are on a more national scale or even more professional specific? So by professional specific, I mean by licensure specific, that you would recommend from a mentoring perspective?
I would say that varies more case to case. I would say that in general, though, starting to ask around very specific questions, you know, a classic line that young people are asked is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I prefer the question of asking who your mentor is, because it doesn't take long in any study of history to figure out whoever your mentor is forgives a lot of sins. Don't want to get political, but there's certain politicians that are born into certain families or know certain people that because they have a certain last name and certain people are vouching for them, certain things get passed over real quick. So what I'm alluding to is when you start asking around who's mentoring you and you start saying, who do you go to for resources? I'm talking like at organizations such as this, and people start saying certain names and you start hearing certain orgs start coming up, that's who you start tracking down, right? So I will affirm formal organizations out there that do value like recreational type things or social type things, right? So at a lot of conferences, they'll have like a coffee hour, a happy hour, or just like a social breakfast type thing, right? Like those are important to go to. I have a rule: be the first in the room and the last in the room at any event. Be the first in the room, so you just be comfortable in your own skin, right? Just be comfortable in the room, like, all right, I'm here, I belong here. You psych yourself up. But be the last in the room, because the people that stay left, all we want to talk to people. Those are the social butterflies. Even if you ain't a social butterfly, you meeting the social butterflies. And if you were to ask those questions, they could probably answer them or say, I know somebody that knows somebody. I'm kind of like, could go off on this answer for a whole another hour, because I've actually founded like a dozen different collaboratives in this country. I created one for academics in Los Angeles, one in Chicago, one in Cleveland, Ohio. I created one for educators in Los Angeles. I created another one for folks that work with youth in Portland, Oregon, Las Vegas, Nevada, and in Los Angeles. And keep in mind, I've only lived really in 3 places in my career: LA, Palm Springs, and Cleveland. And some of those cities I was mentioning required multi-hour drives and flights. So for me, I'm not limited by the bounds of geography. I'm not limited by whether or not we have to live in the same state. Heck, I can point you to proteges in South Africa that I work with. So what I'm getting at is perhaps as we develop collaborative partnerships, my theory is this as a networker. Hey, I like meeting with this person and we're having a great meal. And I might say, hey, do you want to hang out after this? Because I had a bunch of other conversations with people like you that I think you should meet. So I've ongoingly always tried to think about how I'm bringing value to people's lives. So the value is not just that I know certain things or I have certain experiences. The knowledge, the benefit of knowing me is that I also know people in different spaces from different demographics that could potentially be people that I could put into contact with other people to bring value for them.
Dr. Villas, you are a consummate networker, and we greatly appreciate you sharing the framework of mentorship with us today and just showcasing that it can be so organic as far as relationship building and a one-to-one. Our Chief of Staff, Rachel Johnson-Yates, earlier shared with us a charge to take notes and then to vision 6 months from now, what does this look like from the interactions that the team has had in the space today. And so I would love to connect with you on what does building a collaborative for our participants and further look like. And I know we've run out of time, but we have this wonderful additional post-conference production that I will follow up with you on that includes some phenomenal music and your lyricism. So we will certainly do that as a post-conference follow-up for our participants today. Thank you so much for founding the Los Angeles School of Mentorship and for your work across the nation and the world in making our collaborations that much more fruitful because people can own their own mentoring and relationships. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely, and I will respond to everybody's message if anybody reaches out to me on social media. That's just a personal commitment I've made to practice what I preach. So I appreciate everybody's work in here. Do not give up. Do not get burned out. Lean into the mentors, into the colleagues around you. You're not made to do this work alone.
Thank you, Dr. Villas. We are going to take a 30-minute break before we resume with our 3:30 Eastern session with Dr. Neal and Dr. Sweezy regarding bridging the autism service chasm, implementation of a coordinated care continuum for patients with the most significant behavioral health challenges. Dr. Villas, again, thank you so much. We will reconnect very shortly post-conference and we'll have much more offerings for our participants today. Thank you again for your insights.
You're welcome. Thank you.